Before Survivor's Quest, Outbound Flight was something referenced in Timothy Zahn's Star Wars novels, but not hashed out in any detail. We knew that the Jedi, led by Joruus C'baoth, set off on an expedition to find a way out of the galaxy, and that Thrawn, prompted by Palpatine, destroyed the Outbound Flight project. Lucasfilm and Del Rey's original plans for this novel were for it just to be a Luke and Mara counterpart to Tatooine Ghost, Troy Denning's 2003 novel that focused on Han and Leia. But Zahn had the idea for Survivor's Quest to provide the closure for its prequel, Outbound Flight, which was originally meant to come out before Attack of the Clones in 2002, but was delayed until January 2006. Survivor's Quest made it to number 9 on the New York Times bestseller list for the week of February 22nd, 2004, and was ultimately on the list for 2 weeks. Like Tatooine Ghost, I own the hardcover of Survivor's Quest and have owned it for many years. I've reread it multiple times, but according to Goodreads, I had not reread it since 2011. I remembered most of the mystery plot on the Chaff Envoy, but surprisingly little of the scenes once they actually got on Outbound Flight. So, a brief summary. The Chiss in the unknown regions have discovered the remains of Outbound Flight, the pioneering Jedi expedition from 50 years ago that was destroyed by Grand Admiral Thrawn. The Chiss wish to hand over the remnants of the project to the New Republic, specifically to Luke Skywalker and his wife Mara Jade, but Luke and Mara will not make this journey alone. They will be accompanied by a young Imperial officer of Thrawn's Imperial splinter group, a New Republic ambassador who has a mysterious hidden agenda of his own, the Chiss, and a group of aliens who wish to pay tribute to the Jedi who saved them from bloodthirsty conquerors. But the ship has barely been underway before suspicion and an unknown saboteur run rampant. And once they reach the derelict remains of Outbound Flight, everyone will face their gravest danger yet. As with Tatooine Ghost, Survivor's Quest is not a sweeping space opera like a lot of the Star Wars novels. It's much more tightly focused on a smaller cast of characters, which I appreciate. I do love the epic, galaxy-wide dramas that happen, but I also like when things are much smaller scale. So Survivor's Quest opens with Mara Jade on an unnamed planet in the Outer Rim, which I found a little odd. This is Star Wars. Most people like to peruse the galaxy map, so you didn't even give us its names on. Anyway, she's been married to Luke for 3 years, but she's still trying to disentangle herself from Card's organization. So she's here to let some smugglers know that since Card's now in the information business, their services are not needed. She has to face off against an antiquated droideka, which put a pin in that for giant foreshadowing. Luke shows up because apparently he is also accompanying her on this business trip so that they can have a little time together. When they receive a message from Card that they need to contact him immediately, they find out that a message was sent to them from Admiral Park of Narawan. There's too many vowels in that name. But this message has been stolen by one of Card's employees, Dean Jinzler. So they head to Narawan. They get the message again from Park, who says that the Chiss have discovered the remains of Outbound Flight. They make it to the Chiss ship in time. They meet Ambassador Formby, one of the members of one of the Chiss 9 ruling families. He's got a very small staff on board, a number of Chiss military officers. And then we've got the representatives from the Empire of the Hand. We've got Dean Jinzler, who's pretending to be a New Republic ambassador, and the Geroons, these peaceful, nomadic rather silly aliens who said that the Jedi saved them from the Vagaari, these marauding aliens of the unknown regions, and they want to pay tribute to them. They set out, and the mystery plot unfolds in which someone is doing things on the ship, like there's a fire, one of the Geroons is shot, Fel's data cards of Outbound Flight are stolen, there's line creepers in the hyperdrive, the Imperials find out that someone's put a tracker on the ship, like a lot's going on. They finally make it to Outbound Flight, and as the title would suggest, there are survivors, but they hate Jedi for some reason. So everyone's broken up into groups. Some of them are talking with the survivors. Some of them are wandering around learning things about the ship, like there's this makeshift prison. Down on the bottommost dreadnought, there's a lightsaber and a Chiss charric on the command deck. And then when they go up to talk to everyone, big twist. The Geroons are not who they said they were. They are actually the Vagaari in disguise, and they decide they want to kill everyone and steal one of the dreadnoughts. So then there's a lot of fighting with the Vagaari. The Vagaari steal one of the dreadnoughts. Luke and Mara take after them. They fight. There is a fully functioning droideka, so foreshadowing paid off. They defeat them, and there is a very hasty resolution in the end. Because this is basically, for a lot of the story, a small group of people confined in one place, we get to know those characters very well. And that's what I really appreciate about stories like this, is that the author is able to dig into people's heads, maybe in more depth than we would in one of those epic, swashbuckling, galaxy-wide adventures. For Luke wants to go to Outbound Flight because he's hoping that it will have more information about the old Jedi Order. For better or for worse, he is the leader of this new Jedi Order, and he's not sure if he's always chosen the right things and he's on the right path. This is one bit where having knowledge of the prequels helps a little bit, because in the 90s era Star Wars books, no one had any idea about this, like, Jedi code against attachments. But now that Luke is married, so many of his Jedi are married, but we, the reader, know that the old Jedi Order didn't do that. He can have a little bit of uncertainty here, whether that was the right decision. Like, he's not gonna change his mind, but is that okay that his order is different than the old order? But that's mainly it for Luke. Most of his story is just being there, supporting Mara, because Mara is the one going through the big emotional arc here. Rather like in Tatooine Ghost, where most of the emotional stuff was on Leia's side, here Mara, as she ends her involvement with Card's organization, is having to come to terms with whether she sees a place for herself in the New Republic. And spending time with Chak Fel and the stormtroopers of the Empire of the Hand makes her remember her Imperial past. That there's a lot of nostalgia there, and she has to sort of work through that. This is one bit. It started with Vision of the Future, but it continues here into Survivor's Quest, where Timothy Zahn has retconned a bit Mara's past. When we met her in the Thrawn trilogy, she was a bitter, sarcastic, troubled woman. And we learned that she was the Emperor's hand, basically his personal operative. But then we learn in Vision of the Future that she was a very naive, idealistic woman who thought she was doing good, that she was used by the Emperor, and that she didn't fall to the dark side because she was serving. But I have an issue with that, because she's still serving evil. Like, she might have thought she was doing the good thing, but what she was doing was bad. And I think it sort of removes some of the responsibility for her actions from Mara. And her interactions with the stormtroopers and with Fel make her remember how much more ordered the Empire was, how she could give an order and she wouldn't get talk back about it, that people would just do what she said. And so she's having to come to terms with that. I talked a bit in my review of Fool's Bargain about how I have problems with the Empire of the Hand being the good empire. Like, it's the Empire without any of Palpatine's bad bits. And I think my issue here comes down to the name and the iconography. Fel says that they still use stormtroopers because people recognize stormtroopers, they're cautious of them, they fear them. And I guess they use the name because it's like Empire version 2. But they don't have an emperor who's ruling them. They seem to be ruled by military chiefs, by admirals and such, which I believe is a stratocracy, where it's government ruled by military chiefs. And they don't seem particularly imperialistic in that they're not taking over people. They want people to join them, but it has to be that world's decision. So then I just wonder, like, why call yourself the Empire if you're not the Empire? Like, if you want to be all these good things, like, maybe choose a new name for yourself. I guess that's the problem too with the New Republic, where they have a lot of the issues that the Old Republic has. And I don't think that it would be as simple as, we'll change your name and you'll be better. But with the Empire of the Hand, I really wonder that. Like, why call yourself an Empire to begin with? And like, why use stormtroopers? Why not come up with something new that doesn't have that history and weight of the atrocities that were done by people wearing that armor behind it? Anyway, I could go on about this for a very long time. I will stop. When Mara gets to the end, she decides that, yeah, she is fine with being a part of the New Republic. With the Empire, it was more nostalgia for what she remembered, but that may not have been the reality, and in fact was not the reality for everyone who lived under it. I also really like how Zahn portrays their relationship here. If the Hand of Thrawn duology was all about showing us what a good pair Luke and Mara would be, mostly professionally and not really romantically until the end, Survivor's Quest shows us that 3 years in, they are a great partnership and they work well together. Mara is the practical one. Mara is not particularly nice or kind, but she has Luke there, and Luke is just like the kindest person you could possibly meet. And that's one of the things I love so much about Zahn's portrayal of Luke, is how compassionate he is. In the scene where they're fighting against the wolf kills, once the Geroons have revealed themselves as the Vagaari, Mara approaches it as she uses her lightsaber and she just cuts them in half. And Luke approaches it as, well, these are creatures, and they're doing what they're told to do, but I don't necessarily want to kill them, so he uses the Force to put them to sleep. And I just love that difference between their characters, that maybe because Luke in the past has had to kill so many, destroy the Death Star, lead these military missions, that when he has the opportunity to save, he jumps in with feet first. Mara's not compassionate, but Luke is, so they complement each other well. I do wish that there had been a little bit of development of how these constant absences are affecting their relationship. We learn in the beginning that though they've been married for 3 years at this point, because of their jobs, Luke at the Jedi Academy and Mara wrapping things up with Card, they spend more time apart than together. And then the rest of it is them doing this mission together, working so well together. But I would have been interested to see how that affects them. I think that especially for Mara, there would be a level of frustration there that they're married. She wants to spend the rest of her life with him, but she can't yet. And how do you reconcile that? Getting what you want, but it's not really what you want because you don't see each other a lot. But anyway, Zahn doesn't really delve into that. So, despite all my quibbles about a good Empire, I liked getting to meet Chalk Fel, another one of the Fel kids, although a little bit of tricky stuff here. This could be a whole video in and of itself, but by the time we got to the end of the New Jedi Order, it seemed like we had learned the names of all 5 Fel kids, and Chak is not one of them. I liked how he was able to acknowledge his limitations, that he's not a ground officer, he's a starfighter commander. So the fight with the Vagaari on Outbound Flight, he's out of his depth, and he hands over command of the stormtroopers to General Drask because he can recognize that he has a better idea of how to do this. And we met the stormtroopers in fool's bargain. They're very minor characters here, but I liked how well they work together, and that you especially see it in the scenes where everyone's trapped in different turbolift cars. That Luke and Mara have one way to deal with the situation, and Fel and the stormtroopers have another, but they're very effective at what they do. Dean Jinzler is also going through like loads of emotional turmoil here. His older sister was given up to the Jedi Order by his parents, and like we saw in Darth Maul's Shadowhunter, it led to them losing their job. And Dean has a lot of like jealousy and envy there, but also a fair amount of regret because his parents always talked so highly of Lorana. He didn't feel like he could ever match up. But he also saw her before she left, and it was not parting on good terms, so he sees coming to Outbound Flight as a way of laying her memory to rest. The Chiss are interesting. The Chiss have this principle, basically, that they do not attack first. That an enemy has to attack them, and then they will answer, but there are no preemptive strikes. That's how Thrawn got in trouble with his people, and I can see how that would be super frustrating, because you don't want to go around starting wars, but when there's an enemy like the Vagaari, to just wait until they attack you is silly. So Formby undertakes a very Thrawn-esque plan in that he basically makes sure the Vagaari hear that they found Outbound Flight and manipulates them into this situation where they would attack the Chiss. And then the Chiss have all the reason in the world to attack the Vagaari because, once again, we get a hint that there's bad things out there. The Yuuzhan Vong are coming, if you've read the New Jedi Order. So they want to get some cleanup done first. And then we have the Geroons / the Vagaari. I did feel their Geroon disguise was just like a bit overdone, which is probably intentional, so that you as the reader are like, oh, there can't be aliens who are really like this. Like, they have to be hiding something. They're just so naive and so silly. So it works really well when it turns around and it turns out they've been Vagaari all along, and that one of the characters who you thought was like a peon and underling is actually their supreme commander. Of the survivors on Outbound Flight, we mainly meet like one family who have a Force-sensitive little girl, but these survivors are, we never really learn why, but they hate the Jedi. They think the Jedi abandoned them. And so it's dangerous for her to use her abilities, but she has to. I sort of expected that more would come of Evelyn, but as far as I'm aware, she never appears in any other story. So I think my biggest issue with Survivor's Quest is that there is very little resolution here. If you want answers to any of your questions, you're going to have to read Outbound Flight. And in fact, I would recommend that you read Survivor's Quest before Outbound Flight, because you end Survivor's Quest with a very distinct list of questions, and for the most part, Outbound Flight answers them all. But I do find it very sad that both the reader but the characters itself within the story never find out these answers, that Luke and Mara go on this journey, and at the end of it, they still don't know what happened. They still don't know any information about the people who are on it. Like, even if there were a scene where they get the data cards back from Fel, so they're at least able to see, oh, these were the Jedi who were on here. It sort of ends with Luke going like, well, maybe they'll eventually be able to get information out of it, but guess we'll never know what happened. And for a reader, like, that is frustrating to me. The first third to a half of the story is this mystery plot line, and I enjoyed it, but I also found it somewhat slow-paced. It's sort of like a village mystery where everyone is stuck in this place. It can only be a limited number of people, so you have to figure out who done it and why. But As things happen, Luke and Mara question and interrogate and reevaluate the situation over and over and over again. Fel's data cards go missing, so they go, well, maybe Fel never had the data cards to begin with, or maybe Jinzler took them so that we wouldn't check to see if his sister's on the list, or maybe the Geroons took them, or maybe the Chiss took them. And like, they keep going over these things over and over again that it really slows the pace down. They'll come up with a theory, and then they work on that theory, and then there's a new theory, and then they edit the existing theory, and it's probably natural for how you would discuss it, but I would have edited a bit of that out. And this isn't a particularly big book or long book. I just felt like the way they tackled the mystery did not help the pace here. And as with Tatooine Ghosts, it seems like part of this novel's reason for existence is just to incorporate prequel stuff into the post-Return of the Jedi era. So we have Luke now aware that the Jedi did not have attachments and did not marry. We have people talking about droidicas and the Trade Federation as though they knew about it all along, but then you're also left questioning, like, if they knew about it all along, why is this the first we've heard of it? The references only go up through Attack of the Clones because this came out in early 2004. Revenge of the Sith one come out for over another year. But it's nice to see a little bit of that integration into Luke and Leia's time frame as well. And finally, on the resolution front, this isn't even resolution of the questions about Outbound Flight, but I just felt like the ending was a bit lacking here. Luke and Mara have to jet off to try to overtake the dreadnought that the Vagaari stole. So they don't really get to talk to Formby and Feesa. Fel and the stormtroopers and Drask are like off somewhere. They talk to Jinzler and Evelyn and her mother and uncle briefly. And then there's that whole fight thing, and they beat the Vagaari. And then we hear in passing that the Chiss went and wiped them all out at the Vagaari rendezvous point, and we don't even see that. And then they talk to Jinzler again, and he's like, yep, so they're gonna settle the survivors in the unknown regions, and I'm going with them. And like, we never get to see Fel and the stormtroopers. Like, how's Fel's arm doing? He got bitten by a wolf kill. And I just would have liked to have a more meaty ending because it did feel a little lacking here. So, in short, Survivor's Quest ends with almost as many questions as answers. What really happened to Outbound Flight? Why do the survivors hate the Jedi? Why was there a lightsaber and a charric on the command deck of the first dreadnought? How is Jory Car'das involved in this? And who are the visitors who Feesa referenced, who taught the Chiss basic before Outbound Flight ever showed up? You must read Outbound Flight to find out the answers to all those, and I do wish that Survivor's Quest had contained a little more resolution of its own. Still, I appreciated the lower stakes of the adventure here compared to the Sturm und Drang of the New Jedi Order series. And it was just nice to see Luke and Mara's relationship and how they functioned so well just 3 years into their marriage. So next time I'm going to be reading the second adult novel in the Clone Wars multimedia project, this one featuring Obi-Wan Kenobi and Kit Fisto on a mission to Ord Cestus. The Cestus Deception by Stephen Barnes.